Hey everybody, it's LavenderTowne, and today we're going into the dark depths of Reddit community men writing women and drawing their Lovecraftian descriptions of women literally. Alice's body is one of those miracles of malnourishment, which has resulted in a thin, brittle bone structure with overgrown breasts. With this dietary regime, she has acquired a body that many girls of her age would kill for. Her ribs can be counted through her shirt, her collarbones stick out like sharpened boomerangs, her ankles look like a display from an anatomy lab, but her breasts have somehow survived lack of proper nourishment. In fact, seem to have thrived on this lack of a balanced diet, like Persian cantaloupes that only grow in the desert and die if it rains more than once a season. Okay, so first we gotta draw these boomerang collarbones. I imported pictures of the boomerang because at first I really couldn't even understand what he meant by that. I was picturing them inverted, which would mean that her clavicles were completely broken, but I realized it's actually not as weird as I was picturing. Mostly what he was getting at, I think, is that you could see her whole collarbone because she's so thin. The most egregious thing about this description, and why it ended up on the subreddit, is how emphatically he waxes poetic about how this girl's body is magically not just thin, but skin and bones, and yet she has this really big and full chest. Even in the passage, it seems aware that this would be a miracle, and it's not really possible. Anatomically, a full chest is going to be made up mostly of fat, which is why when people lose a lot of weight, they're also going to go down bra sizes. While everyone's fat distribution is a little bit different, there is no way without surgery to achieve a skeletal body with a very full chest, and it does make a reader wonder what the motives were of a writer to dream up such a body type. The ankle comment is just funny to me. It's so specific, and for the life of me, I can't really picture it. I guess he's saying that her ankles are so skinny that you can see the bones and tendons in it. But usually you wouldn't see that in an ankle as much as like the backs of the hands or maybe her spine through the skin of her back. Ankle just feels like a weird body part to jump to and not a supernatural thing for a POV character to notice. It's also a hallmark of these types of descriptions that we are painted too clear a picture of her body and nothing else. Like her face, her hair color, her skin tone, her clothes, how she's standing, the look on her face. It's all been pushed aside just to talk about her body. Now hopefully, there's more description of what she looks like elsewhere in the book, but since we're working just off the Reddit, I left a question mark for her face since we don't really know anything about it. To be clear, this community and this video were meant mostly in a lighthearted way. Some of the writers featured here actually have written books that I personally like, but it is interesting to highlight some of the examples where women are written in a really weird or objectifying way. I also want to clearly state that I don't believe that guys can't write women and women's stories well. There are even some male directors that I feel capture my experience and hardships as a girl better than some female directors, which is a subject I've been considering making a whole video essay on, but I'm getting off track. On to the next description. Josephine, the children's book illustrator, came over for lunch the next day. Austin wanted to know what she, as a woman, thought of Big Juliet, though he realized she wasn't very typically female. Was any woman? Would he have felt right about speaking for all men? Gay men? Josephine was from Tours, reputed to be the home of the best French accent, and she did speak her own language clearly and elegantly, with not too much slang and no Ellisons. She had the fully awakened, gently satiric response to the absurdities of her friends that was characteristic of someone from a big family, a family of talkers and observers rather than TV watchers. Her beauty was regal, her long neck lengthened still more by the blonde hair swept up and stabbed haphazardly at the top by a comb or gathered into a ponytail by a red rubber band. A pointy chin and hollow cheeks, crowned by prominent cheekbones, and full breasts that visibly strained at the breastbone like two puppies pulling on their leashes in slightly diverging directions. She had long legs and disproportionately small feet, the big toe aristocratically shorter than the others. She wasn't fussy at all, or coy, or full of feminine wiles. Okay, so this one actually has some stuff I like and some I don't. I actually tracked down the more full description because I only saw the really small segment about the puppies and the big toe. And I do think that the fact that we start with her job and also talk about the way that she speaks, I think is actually a really great way to introduce a character. It tells you a lot about them right off the bat. We also see her hair color, which again, I like, but I do think this ended up on the Reddit because of the puppies. That's just too funny. It's very evocative. Like, you definitely can picture what he's saying. But I definitely wanted to draw this. The toes were actually the part that I was the most freaked out about. Like, all of her toes are longer than her big toe. That's really unusual. And why does he know that? How did he see that? Like, this is someone who's just entered his home as a guest, and they're like chatting, I think. So why is she looking and measuring her feet? Like, I always get really weirded out when the feet come up. Like in that previous episode where the softness of the girl's feet is talked about when the male character is first meeting her. It's just like, why are we down there? Why are we down there in the toe zone? I don't get it. So yeah, first things first, I gotta figure out how to pose her so that we can see these disproportionately small, aristocratic feet of hers. So I had her with her foot kind of like up cocked onto the back of her leg, and she's seated. I wanted to give her a little more personality because the author bothered to give her a little more personality, so it's the least I can do. And I generally just wanted her to really look like she has two puppies pulling away from her body, straining at her breastbone. It's just such a wild description. I honestly, like, I kind of love it. I gotta confess, like, I do think that, like, it's weird, but in a way that I think is adding and not subtracting necessarily. It doesn't feel overly objectifying. It definitely is more of like a attractiveness based description, but again, I think I'm very softened by the fact that we started with like who she actually is and have more details on like the full picture. I feel like the more you tell about your character, the less weird it is for you to be talking about their boobs. If you only talk about their boobs and their visible ribs and stuff, and then forget to mention like who they are at all, I think that that's way more suspicious than this passage. But yeah, I definitely wanted to draw her with the puppies straining. I think it looks so cute. I kind of want a shirt like this, but I feel like if you wore this outside, people would think unkind thoughts about you. But I think it's really cute. I also really like the way that her pose worked. I was really nervous about having her legs orientated this way. It kind of looks like she's doing a yoga pose. There's one where you like pull your knee in and have your ankle over the back of your knee. Really good for your back, but that's basically what she's doing, and I mainly did that so that you could see her weird foot next to her face. The toes just look so wrong to me. I don't know how this is aristocratic. Like, what is he talking about? I didn't even know this was a beauty standard I was supposed to be insecure about. Like, why is my big toe not my shortest toe? But yeah, really, really strange. I decided to draw her with a pretty simple color palette. We don't get any information about her coloration other than her hair and the rubber band on her hair. She definitely sounds like some kind of like model or something. I know she's a children's book illustrator. I do think that that's a cool job. I think that would be really fun to do for a while. But the only thing I'm really missing from her face description, I wish I knew what her nose looked like, because he did say she had a regal beauty, which to me makes me think of like a longer, straighter nose, but I gave her a normal, like my usual borderline anime, barely there nose. But in retrospect, I kind of wish I'd given her a stronger nose bridge, because I feel like that would make more sense with the way that he was describing her, but I don't know. Anyway, I think she turned out really cute. And again, yeah, like, what do you guys think? What do you think about this description? Is this one weird and problematic to you? Do you hate it? Do you like it? Let me know. The only thing I really hate is the toe. I hate the big toe. What the heck? Why would you say that? If anyone ever describes me initially by my toe length in relation to my other toes, I'm gonna go insane. That's too weird. The woman was on the chubby side, young and beautiful and all that went with it, but chubby. Now a young beautiful woman who is, shall we say, plump, seems a bit off. Walking behind her, I fixated on her body. Around young, beautiful, fat women, I am generally thrown into confusion. I don't know why. Maybe it's because an image of their dietary habits naturally congeals in my mind. When I see a goodly sized woman, I have visions of her mopping up that last drop of cream sauce with bread, wolfing down that final sprig of watercress garnish from her plate. And once that happens, it's like acid corroding metal. Scenes of her eating spread through my head and I lose control. Your plain fat woman is fine. Fat women are like clouds in the sky. They're just floating there, nothing to do with me. But your young, beautiful, fat woman is another story. I am demanded to assume a posture towards her. I could end up sleeping with her. That is probably where all the confusion comes in. Which is not to say that I have anything against fat women. Confusion and repulsion are two different things. I've slept with fat women before, and on the whole, the experience wasn't bad. If your confusion leads you in the right direction, the results can be uncommonly rewarding. But of course, things don't always take the right course. Sex is an extremely subtle undertaking, unlike going to the apartment store on Sunday to buy a thermos. Even among young, beautiful, fat women, there are distinctions to be made. Fleshed out one way, they'll lead you in the right direction. Fleshed out another way, they'll leave you lost, trivial, confused. In this sense, sleeping with fat women can be a challenge. There must be as many paths of human fat as there are ways of a human death. This was pretty much what I was thinking as I walked down the corridor behind this young, beautiful, fat woman. A white scarf swirled around the collar of her pink suit. From the fullness of her earlobes dangled square gold earrings, glinting with every step she took. Actually, she moved quite lightly for her weight. Wow, okay. So, I think that this passage is really interesting. I think that it ended up on the subreddit because he's just so confused. He's so like scared and baffled that he seems to be attracted to this woman who's not skinny, and I think that it's really funny, honestly. It's definitely like a little offensive the way that he's talking about it, like she's some kind of like wild creature that like anything could happen. He might accidentally end up sleeping with her. It might be a good experience or a bad experience for him, and it seems insanely dehumanizing. So yeah, I think that that's probably how this ended up here. I think it's actually pretty fascinating to think about someone's thought process like this, and it really clarifies, I think, some of the hostility that beautiful fat girls on the internet receive. Like, I think there are a lot of guys that are thinking thoughts like this where they're like embarrassed that they're like attracted to like a chubby girl and they take it out on that girl. It's very cringy, but yeah. So first things first, I gotta draw this beautiful, confusing fat woman. I actually ended up drawing a little image of the POV guy character as well, just because I think his confusion is a critical part of why this description is on this subreddit. He's back there, he's like, I don't understand what's happening to me. She's just kind of like doing her own thing. Like, she's literally just like walking around in this passage. She's not trying to seduce him or anything. He's just fixating on her for no reason. And she does have a chic pink suit on and gold earrings. I am glad we've got some description of like what she's wearing and what's going on with her, other than that she's beautiful and fat, which he said quite a shocking amount of times. He really did repeat that over and over. The idea that like he has uncontrollable visions of her eating food is so interesting to me. I don't know. He says it's not the same as revulsion, but the way that he describes her like wolfing down the last bit of garnish and all that stuff, and like this like weird fixation on her gluttony, it does seem like he's battling with some like feelings of like disgust and like all these preconceived notions about her. It's just fascinating. This passage is really interesting to me. I think that like it could be read as something relatively self-aware, and like maybe this narrator is just not aware, but the writer is. I find it hard to know for sure. This is a translation also out of Japanese, so we don't necessarily know what the original nuances of the text are, and that is important. I actually almost did a section describing Lisbeth Salander from Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, but I found out actually that the English translation was way more misogynistic and weird than the original, so I didn't end up including it here because that just doesn't seem fair. Jolenta and I were of no less value. I had no painter's hand and too little understanding of the necessities of the play even to assist the doctor in arranging our properties. Jolenta, I think, rebelled physically and psychically against any kind of work, and certainly against this. Those long legs, so slender below the knee, so rounded to bursting above them, were inadequate to bear much weight beyond that of her own body. Her jutting breasts were in constant danger of having their nipples crushed between lumber or smeared with paint. Nor had she any of that spirit that animates the members of a group forwarding the group's purpose. Dorcas had said that I had been alone the night before, and perhaps she had been more nearly correct than I had supposed, but Jolenta was still more solitary. Dorcas and I had each other, Baldanders and the doctor, their crooked friendship, and we came together in the performance of the play. Jolenta only had herself, the incessant performance whose sole goal was to garner admiration. She touched my arm and without speaking rolled enormous emerald eyes to indicate the edge of our natural amphitheater, where a grove of chestnuts lifted white candles among their pale leaves. Okay, so when I drew this one initially, my first big pain point was the fact that her legs are absolutely terrifying when you picture them. So your legs have two major muscles in them, like two major points at which they jut out when you have muscles in your legs. And if you have skinny legs, typically your thighs and below your thighs will both be skinny. And if you have really strong muscular legs or chubby legs, they're going to be full on both segments. There might be a little bit of like difference, especially like if you're a cyclist, sometimes your calves get super ripped, but usually there will be some kind of equilibrium. What they're describing is really skinny calves and then bursting rounded thighs, and that just, I mean, you can clearly see what it looks like. It looks really strange. It looks like some kind of injury or something. I'm not really sure. But also, like, the body horror of it all. Later on in the passage, he says that each of her boobs are nearly as large as her head, which is unfortunate because that's something I can actually check in my illustration. And initially, I definitely tried to make them a little smaller because I didn't want her to look quite so horrifying. But then I checked my mass against her head, and I had to make them way bigger, and it looks really crazy. I just wanted to draw her kind of like toppling over under her own weight, because that's practically what they're describing here. They're saying that she can't really lift much more than her own body weight. It's very creepy and horror like. I didn't actually draw the nipples that are jutting out and in danger of being crushed, just because first of all I don't think YouTube would allow that, but also because I didn't want to, so I just put some like warning signs there just so that everyone's aware that it's, you know, dangerous to have in a construction zone apparently. So there's that. She's also described as having red gold hair in that other passage, so I included that as well. And she has emerald eyes, which is very fanficky. I feel like comparing the eyes to a gemstone, but I gave her emerald green eyes, and yeah, she looks like she's just having a horrible time under her own mass, which, I mean, I guess props for realism there. I didn't get a ton of description on her clothes, so I just gave her a top that would clearly illustrate what we're talking about. It's striped so we can kind of see what's going on here with the curvature of her body. And I definitely think that this one is really strange. I'm sure that this is a character who is all about her appearance, and that's why we're hearing so much about it. But I guess I wonder why there are so many female characters where like her attractiveness and her seductiveness is like her main thing. They even say that like she basically exists only to be admired. That is her reason for living, and you know, it's totally fine to have characters like that. I'm not saying that should never exist, but it is something you see a lot with female characters, and I guess it's getting a little bit, I don't know, it's kind of a bummer. I definitely think that like her legs combined with this super full chest it's giving more body horror than any of the previous ones. Usually it was just like a funny metaphor or a weird description. The first one, I guess, is the only one that comes close to this, because there was such a description of like such an incredibly skinny person with such a full chest. But with this one, it's both her chest and her thighs, and then everything else is skinny again. I really do think that like there are definitely more interesting ways to develop your female characters other than giving them cartoonish anatomy that's hard to even picture. I think that goes without saying. But yeah, again, I don't want to be overly harsh. A lot of these are randomly clipped out segments from books that may be very good. And it's possible that if you actually read them in context, they wouldn't stand out to you that much. But they are really funny to see as islands on their own, because man, like, some of these things I would never imagine to write, like I would never think to design a character this way, either in my drawings or certainly not in like a book. Again, I do have a preference for certain types of character descriptions. I like when they're vivid, but they don't even have to be very visual. I think that the most critical thing is like knowing how the character like stands and emotes, and like what their voice sounds like, what they smell like. That kind of stuff really like speaks to me as a reader. So those are some things that I really like. And I think that because I am a graphic novelist and I usually draw everything, sometimes it's fun to think about characters with your other senses, like, smell and touch. Like even like, do they have like coarse straw like hair from too much swimming or something? I really like descriptions like that. So anyway, here's Jolenta. She's crumbling under her own weight. This looks so like, I tried so hard to make it authentic to what's being described without making it look like horrible and fetishy, but I feel like it still does. So sorry about that. So here are all my women from r/menwritingwomen. If you enjoyed this video and you haven't seen the previous ones, please check out the playlist. And let me know if you guys have seen any crazy character descriptions that you would like me to draw. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye! Thank you so much to my wonderful patrons, including Colorful Ambitions, Aaron, Viet, Raccoon Jam, Grexius, Olia, Brandon Stark, CB, Lucy Amajiki, Liv, Salty Jackrabbit, Ravenscrow, Zocelot, Teal Music, Jabber Dabber Doo, Kadaria, Deadly Nightshade Art, Astrofox Art, The Expressive Poker Face, Tsubaki, Cutie Pie, Kola, JJ Jade, and of course, Liv.